Okay, this video is the second video from our new apologetics and outreach ministry. IAmEVER. .org. Of course, ever is the term from which the actual word Hebrew is derived. So as our twin outreach website, IAmKoine, is from the Koine text, New Testament, which is our theology, which is our expression of our theology, such as someone says, they might say, "Oh, I hear you're a Baptist," which is certainly not a term used for a denomination. It's an accusation, for we have no license to preach nor to baptize, and certainly wouldn't seek such licensure from any state-sponsored religion. We're here in the United States for that very reason, and we have a great wall of separation that it will never be scaled, so that our government will not be commandeered by any religion or, quote, church in a loose term. But this is the expression of our faith with reference to the Hebrew language. It's a good topic today, really controversial. Sam Harris, he's a young atheist. Really, he's not an atheist, he says. He's just someone who happened to not be in some type of religion, which he would certainly find speaking with Baptists who aren't Catholic, Protestant, Judaic, Islamic, or occultic, very fascinating people. He'll find the work's already done that atheists presume needs to be done. Everything that needed to be done about religion has been done, and nothing that needs to be done about religion no longer needs to be done. We have the Bills of Rights, the inalienable right of freedom of speech, peaceable assembly, to bear arms, to protect ourselves against persecutors, that is terrorists, Fifth Amendment, so inquisitions can't take place. So this is some abstract, this is more of an intellectual topic that he discusses that's more arouses more emotive responses. He says here the question of free will touches nearly everything we care about: morality, law, politics, religion, public policy, intimate relationships, feelings of guilt, and personal accomplishment. Most of what is distinctly human about our lives seems to depend upon our viewing one another as autonomous persons capable of free choice. And then his very provocative statement in blue there. He says, if the scientific community were to declare free will an illusion, it would precipitate a culture war far more belligerent than the one that has been waged on the subject of evolution. Well, first, he's an advocate of conversational intolerance, which is certainly the religious thing to do. That's why we have no church of the United States. We're not under any particular state religion. And so it's very religious of Sam Harris to advocate conversational intolerance. And in this intolerance that he is so certain is necessary, we know from our history tongue screws were applied to us so that we wouldn't be free to speak as we were being executed, martyred. And then, of course, you see why we had to be. We were writers, translators, we published literature, we dispensed the gospel in the language of the people. So Sam Harris bringing up free will and all this, but can we study in our Hebrew Bible and learn anything? Do we have a definition? Because first, you notice he as scholastic as he is, did not define his term, which that's very religious of him as well, to not define his term. He just begins speaking so that the audience, he didn't define his term or his phrase, if you will. So he didn't define it, and two, he didn't bother to document where this idea even originated. And then certainly he makes no defense. In actuality, he makes a denial, and an empty one, a denial of something he's not defined nor documented, which is just bad hermeneutics. But lest we fall prey to the bad hermeneutics that react against things, you'll notice today people have not defined free will, that is, religion has not defined it from the Bible. You have to choose libertarian or a compatibilistic philosophy. So it's undefined and it's undocumented. And that is what I mean by this is it's not libertarian or compatibilistic are not products of hermeneutics. They don't lead out from the text. And then this is why it's indefensible. You're trying to, in one case, you're trying to have a discussion and people jump into it because they recoil, and as Sam Harris mocked in his text, it would precipitate a culture war. What he's really saying is he's aware of how coiled and emotionally volatile people are and how prepared they are to, I suppose, react against each other, which reaction is the most ignoble form of expression. And it doesn't seem to discourage people because they seem to find someone on every corner, someone next to them that's ready to banter and fight. But what would we do if we did define it, as we're taught in Hermeneutics 101, to define our term and take the emotion out, since we're not emotional and irrational people? We'll define our term. So a definition for free will, which, be careful, the trouble with peacemaking is the people that have a vested interest in keeping the war going. If you talk to a manufacturer of weapons, he might not enjoy hearing about peacetime. So if you meet someone that makes depends upon the economy of conflict, you might find a lot of pushback, and that's the trouble with peacemaking. So we'll define it from the Bible. We'll define it, we'll document it, and then we can defend it. That is, give a rationale. Again, because here in this scholastic writing, it's a bestseller, sensational. He says some very sensational things. He doesn't seem to be able to distinguish God from the religions he attacks. Neither does he speak about the people that the religions martyred, which were us, the group called Baptist. A group of people that had no name, had no denominational or religious order affiliation, that were never part of any of the state religions that have been brought under the rule of law in this world today. Jewish states under the rule of law, the Catholic states under the rule of law, the Protestant states under the rule of law. Islamic state is a little bit out of check and balance right now, but will soon be brought back in under the rule of law. There's occultic movements, even one of the largest, fastest growing cult in the world, Mormonism, that originated in the United States. It's still under the rule of law in this country. Witch hunting is outlawed. A disestablishment of religion took place in Connecticut with the collaboration of the Baptist and Thomas Jefferson, Quincy Adams, and other people like that who saw the wisdom in protecting freedom of speech, conscience, and thought. So how do we define it from the Hebrew language? Well, let's just get a little book here on syntax, biblical Hebrew. This is just an introduction. Nothing in this book is really complicated. I wouldn't want to imply it. It might be big, but that's primarily because it could have been written better. That is, condensed, you might say. Probably an abridged edition would be more useful. You can develop your own, as we're working on now, because you just really don't need to go through so much. It becomes almost arduous, exhaustive, but it's enjoyable if you really want to know what the text says. And here's a passage here, not a passage, but a statement here, describing hifil. The hifil stem, it's a causative active. There's a causative passive. really what it speaks of is how and what is the relationship of a subject to the action. And examples, for example, Isaiah received his vision in Isaiah 53. In the first verse, he asked a good question: who will cause himself to believe this report? That is, he asked the Lord. And it's a good question. Who will do that? So if we want a good definition, one that won't change, we can just say causal agency. And there we go. And then again, there was Isaiah. Then there's Genesis 2:21, where God caused a deep sleep upon Adam. Then there's Genesis 15:6, where Abram. Here, let's do that. Genesis 15:6 says, Abram, he caused himself to believe. That's a very large matter, because people today seem to prefer philosophy. And it's okay, because the field of philosophy is a wonderful field. However, we're talking about the Bible now and the language. So Genesis 15:6, and here this says that X, which is the subject, caused that Y, the second subject, to be or to do something. And what that would look like if we really just want to study our Bible and move on, rather than be preoccupied with the pretense that somehow we don't have a definition, somehow we don't have a rationale. Causal agency, God is a causal agent. Man is considered and called a causal agent. There's texts that speak of the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, where it says he caused, so he's the subject. So here's X, first subject, we'll say. There's X, the first subject. He, Pharaoh, caused himself. No, not himself, sorry. Caused his heart. And that's the word we get. This is where a lot of people have a lot of discussions. He caused his heart to be hardened. And of course, there's a passage that speaks of God's causation in that. All you need to do then, a good Bible study, be distinguished between the relationship of the two causal agents. In one text, we had God caused a deep sleep on Adam. Abram caused himself to believe. Now we have a Pharaoh, a causal agent, who caused his heart to be hardened. And we know that God was involved. So we have causal agent, causal agency, and good discussion would be to place those in their context. But to suggest that we don't have a definition from the Bible of free will, which I do not enjoy the phrase or the fanaticism around the word. People like to express such concern about something. They're so concerned that they don't care to define it. But without good hermeneutics, you will never have good apologetics. And without a rationale, that is, if you don't define the term, don't define it, don't document it, then you can't defend it. And this is where apologetics, this is apologetics. It's our rationale, you see. This is our conclusion, if you will. You see, premise 1, define, premise 2, document, therefore you can defend. But define it, this is hermeneutics 101. And of course, these are conjoined realities. This hermeneutics, you can't even proceed with apologetics without hermeneutics. And if you don't practice that science, all you're doing is picking sides in an empty discussion, leaving the Bible on the table, if you will, and allowing the Bible to be irrelevant to the discussion. So when someone writes a sensational book like this and you get caught up in all the abstract expressions, and I'm sure he's a wonderful young man. We're thankful for the freedom of speech he has. I hope he keeps writing. I hope he continues to advocate conversational intolerance, showing himself to be very religious indeed, showing himself very shrewd in the beginning of his book, noticing the emotional context of our culture, desiring to provoke all of this reaction because it's good for the economy. This, you can buy one of these. This one was $9.99. So you can see that each time someone reacts, he can make $10. So that's pretty good. Most of the time you'll find out it's the economy, stupid. Why and what sustains and drives all these divisions. But if you look at the Hifil stem in Hebrew, it's already there. We already know the relationship of subject to an action. It's like Adam. He caused himself to subordinate himself to his wife. He caused himself to deliberately disobey. There's no guesswork and causal agency always placed on us. So when someone deliberately causes themselves, him or herself, to not believe, it's on us when we deliberately do that. And when we hear the gospel and when we are convinced of the sin of unbelief, we've all been judged, if you will, of that, the sin of unbelief. And that's it. That's the time of our conviction. We've been convinced. If we respond, that is, deliberately cause ourselves to believe, like the purpose of the gospel, John 20:31, was written in order that we might deliberately cause ourselves to believe. That comes out of the Hebrew. So we have a definition, we have documentation, and that becomes our rationale. So this is our second video of IAmEVER.org. We're just using the Hebrew language, studying what we can know from it. More specific examples in Hebrew text itself with Hebrew verses will be used later.